The voices belonged to the huge crowd of shoppers surrounding Hector P. Valente and Lyle, because they had an audience and because Senor Valente could not resist showing off. He had persuaded Lyle to join him in a free performance of their old stage act. More, more, the surprised but delighted shoppers called out, forgetting all about wanting or even needing pajamas. Mrs. Prim caught up with them just in time to hear still another voice, charged with fury, shout, "What is going on here?" This was Mr. Grumps, and when Mr. Grumps saw what was really going on, his face turned red, blue, and purple with rage. "Madam," he gasped, "we do not permit crocodiles in this store, you know. Remove him at once." "And you, sir," he said, pointing a dagger-like finger to Senor Valente, "you, sir, are dismissed." Something will have to be done about that crocodile. Those warning words of Mr. Grumps still rang in their ears as they said goodbye to Senor Valente outside the store. Mr. Grumps at last made good his threat to do something about that crocodile. The next day, he appeared at the Prim's door with papers authorizing Lyle to be committed to the city zoo. "The zoo!" Mrs. Prim exclaimed miserably. "Whatever would Lyle be doing in the zoo?" "He'll be doing whatever it is normal crocodiles are supposed to be doing," snapped Mr. Grumps, who wasn't being at all nice about it. The Prims examined the papers. They appeared to be in order. There was a little they could do, at least for the moment, to prevent Mr. Grumps from putting Lyle in the zoo. Lyle's first night was difficult indeed. Not wanting to seem unsociable, he decided to join the other crocodiles who were cozily piled together just when he thought he had gotten himself comfortable on top. He awakened to find himself crushed to the very bottom. Lyle's restlessness so annoyed the other crocodiles they all just got up and stomped off in a huff. Lyle was happier during the day when visitors came. He amused everyone with his unusual tricks, and before long was the biggest attraction at the zoo. Joshua and Mrs. Prim visited regularly, arms laden with games, toys, and the Turkish caviar Lyle loved so much. Lyle so loved. Mrs. Prim did her best to smile and appear cheerful, but just couldn't hide her concern. "Are you feeling at all right, dear?" she would ask. "Are you getting enough rest? Are you making friends with the other crocodiles? Do the lions keep you awake at night? Is the floor too damp? Do the flies pester you?" Lyle shook his head yes or no, depending on the question. He tried putting on a brave front, but Mrs. Prim knew very well he was unhappy and fought back her tears. One night, a new keeper appeared at Lyle's cage. Surprise! Surprise! The new keeper turned out to be none other than Hector P. Valente, star of stage and screen. "Shh!" whispered Senor Valente. "I have come to rescue you." Senor Valente unlocked the door of the cage, and an astonished Lyle was set free. "You can't go home again," said Senor Valente when they had put the zoo behind them. Senor Valente was bursting with ideas. "What a old act together again," he said. "We'll fly to Australia. They'll love us in Australia." Lyle groaned. The very thought of never seeing the house on East 88th Street was grim indeed and too much for him to endure. Senior Volante read his thoughts and decided Lyle should have one last look at the house on East 88th Street. Approaching the now sleepy street, they were suddenly met with a wall of dense smoke. The smoke, they realized with horror, was coming from Mr. Grump's house. While Senior Volante ran to signal the alarm, Lyle broke into the house and rescued the still sleeping occupants. A gasping, frightened Mr. Grumps and his cat were led to the safety of the street. Now the Prims and the entire neighborhood were awake and witness to Lyle's heroism. Mr. Grumps couldn't thank him enough. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Mr. Grumps to the crowd of onlookers, "Lyle is the bravest, kindest, most wonderful crocodile in the whole wide world. I would consider it a privilege and a pleasure to have him as our neighbor once more." "Hooray!" shouted the Prims. "Hooray!" shouted the crowd. Lyle moved back to the house on East 88th Street that very night. Several days later, a farewell party was given to the Prims for Senior Volante, who was leaving to seek fortune and adventure in Australia. "Remember," said Mr. Grumps, speaking to Senior Volante, "should you change your mind about leaving, or a job in my store will always be yours just for the asking. We need people with your kind of talent and ability." Everyone smiled happily. Even Loretta. The end. I hope you all enjoyed the story.